All right. Well, let me now then call this meeting to order. Welcome everyone to the Wiseburn Unified School District Board meeting of November 18th, 2021. Thank you all for us at the cabinet here tonight, our volunteer board members, and everyone, of course, joining us at home. It's a regular and full board meeting tonight. We have a public hearing on the Educator Effectiveness Grant, as well as two special presentations, an overview of the Da Vinci Schools Career Technical Education CTE Studio project, as well as a WUSD school renaming exploration update. So at this time, I ask for a motion to adopt the agenda, please.
You have a motion?
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you both. Mrs. Black?
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
All right. Shocking of shocking, Dr. Harbeck, if you'd be kind enough to lead.
Very honored. Thank you. Please stand.
Thank you.
Place your hand on your heart. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Harbeck. Thank you all. We will now move shortly to 3.2 public comments, but before doing so, I want to share and acknowledge those folks who spoke to us on Share Your Thoughts on our website. A couple themes emerged. There were some comments on concerns of vaccine mandates for children and the desire for parental choice, input on the renaming of schools, and survey comments on the survey. And then a comment on tying in recess with lunchtime and children foregoing meals in the interest of playtime over nutrition. So I wanted to acknowledge those and thank you for informing us with your perspectives. We'll now move to public comments. And Ms. Subaki, do we have any public comments tonight?
At this time, I do not have any public comments.
All right, then we will proceed to item 3.4 and our first of two special presentations. The first, we'll be having a guest join us on the CTE school, CTE program. And Dr. Silvers, introduce our guest if you would.
I was on mute. Sure. I just want to say this has sort of been a long time coming. We've been asking Steve Wallace from Da Vinci to kind of be on hold because as to get more information as we're going down the track of figuring out what was going to happen with the CTE Studio Career Technical Education Studio funding. I know this board is aware that there is a proposal out there to put a structure behind 201 North Douglas. I guess it would be to the west, and it would serve as a hangar and a shop, a multi-use or multi-purpose type facility. Nice addition to the campus, and is part of the CTE program. So Steve is here to share. I know I do want to say Steve has put a ton of time, energy, effort, bringing the community together, members of the community who have a lot of input and say, interest, I should say, in this. In building something that could benefit not only the Da Vinci students, but also it could be a place of gathering for students across the Wiseburn School District. So really nice project, and I probably am not doing it justice, so I should just thank Steve and turn it over to him. I see a Doug Brown though, Wendy. That's maybe the wrong person. Is that right?
No,
oh, okay.
Yeah, there's
from SVA. Perfect. Okay.
And there's two under Judy Chang that you can select over. One second.
Here's Doug.
All right.
And
Just waiting for Steve.
Wallace.
If we are still waiting for Steve, I must confess I missed the public hearing. If we need to buy him some time, we can hold the public hearing and then allow him to join when he comes.
Can we just clarify, is he not on, Wendy? Is that what?
He's here. We're trying to get him over. Steve's actually logging on in a different way to
Got
try
it.
to get slide up.
Okay.
And we'll do that public hearing after this presentation.
It looks like he's got an additional one. You can try sliding additional one over.
There he is.
There he is.
Hey, I'm sorry about,
No problem. Nice to see you, Steve.
Hey,
no,
Steve.
I'm joining, sitting right side at our gym where I'm waiting to pick up my daughter from basketball practice. All right, welcome everybody. Appreciate your patience as I've been getting on here. Wanted to share just a little bit about where we're at with the CTE Studio project. I'm really grateful for everyone's time and energy. Blake and Dave, you guys have been super helpful and super excited to have an update for you. And just a real quick update on what we've been doing. Are you able to see my screen here?
Yes. Well,
Okay.
are you sharing something now or?
Well, I'm trying to share a slide deck here. Let me try it again. Is this any better?
Yes.
Yeah, we can see
All
it.
right. Okay. So where we are in the process for the CTE Studio, I know you've heard me share a little bit about it, but over the month of October, we were doing some work in terms of putting out the RFQP for the architecture and design firm, and our committee consisted of folks, teachers, and folks from the community, folks from the whole group that's been involved here. And so where we are now is bringing to you the selected firm. And last night we brought it to the Da Vinci board, and we're bringing it to you this evening. So we had a mandatory job walk a little over a month ago, and 14 firms attended that job walk. 7 of those 14 firms submitted a proposal for the project. 3 of those firms were interviewed. That was SVA, AC Martin, and Morrissey. And our CTE Studio team unanimously recommended SVA Architects Incorporated for the architecture and design services for this project. I believe my colleagues from SVA are here this evening. I think Bob, Doug, and Judy are out there and can speak to you a little bit more about why they chose this project. They really had a terrific presentation. We're excited about the idea, not only of a project that would demonstrate our 2 organizations really working together for the good of the community and the students, as well as the opportunity to continue the work of the CTE programs. And so I'm excited to have them here this evening.
Oh, thank you.
And where we are now is once the architecture firm is approved by the Da Vinci board last night, voted to approve it, and should the Weisburn Unified Board tonight agree to bring SVA on, then we'll draw up a contract and have a contract brought to you between our organization and the SVA architects so that we can move forward with the design process. So that's where we are here, and I want to give you an opportunity to ask any questions either of myself and about the process, or of our colleagues from SVA about why they took this on and what their thoughts are about the project.
Steve, I think it would be great if we could hear. I had a chance to listen in to the Da Vinci board meeting last night, and I know Robert was there yesterday. You know, maybe that would be a good start. Just kind of a little bit about the firm and your interest in the project. Thought it was really well done yesterday.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah, again, my name is Bob Simons. I'm a partner with SVA Architects, and Doug Brown, one of our senior architects, is on board here, and Judy Chang. kind of round out the team associated with it. Just a little background about SVA. SVA, we've been around for some 19 years. I'm kind of in my 40th year, it's hard to believe, in architecture, and predominantly in educational work and studio work. And so it's been, what we enjoy the most about it. We like challenging projects, and I didn't mince any words, I think, last night, that this will be a challenge given what's happening out there with the construction costs escalating and so forth. And so we've talked about that, and I've talked to Steve about we have to be kind of flexible in our approach to this design so that we can be successful. I think that that's going to be real key to the development of it. We've done a lot of work in the South Bay. A lot of people know us from the bond program for Redondo Beach Unified School District. They passed a $140 million bond some 6 or 7 years ago. We were the architects on that whole program there. We're presently working at Hermosa Beach Unified School District. And we've worked at El Segundo. So we kind of tackled the South Bay the best we can. And I think we've been pretty successful in supporting those districts, but this is what we love. We've certainly know the Wiseburn Unified School District. And so we thought it would be impressive to be part of a, prestigious program that you guys have here, and to be part of that, just a very small part, but a part of it, I think is really important to us. And we're here to help out. And we understand a lot of the money's coming from OPSC and funding. And so, making the schedule will be very critical in developing this package. So. And I'm here to answer any questions for anyone.
I have more of a comment rather than a question here, so I'll go ahead and jump in here. As Steve knows, I was not a part of the official RFQ selection process, but I have had the opportunity and pleasure to work with SVA architects, with Bob and Judy, and I believe Doug. I'm not sure if we've worked on a program or on a project before. Obviously, we're in the project construction management industry, but I do want to commend the review committee that selected SVA architects. I do know you do some really, really good work for some very reputable clients as well. So if everything moves forward here, I'd like to just commend the committee for doing their due diligence and going through a very extensive, thorough RFQ process. Vote's not done yet, but in anticipation, hoping to welcome you aboard.
Thank you, Roger. I appreciate it. Appreciate your feedback.
Yeah,
I have a question for Steve, if it's okay. Hey, Steve.
Hi.
So you said your board or your committee gave a unanimous approval or high recommendation for choosing SBA
Yeah, that's right.
as our partner. Why do you think that is? What was it that made it unanimous? Why are we here tonight to vote us on something that's already been a unanimous recommendation? Let's hear it.
I think all of us were incredibly impressed with the way that the SVA team came in and not only were enthusiastic and excited about the project, came in with ideas about how we might go about, they said this is a challenge, and the cost of everything has gone up even since we applied for the grant, and they were enthusiastic about the challenge. As opposed to some of the other firms came in and the first thing they were doing is recommending that we be increasing the budget, and SVA kind of took a different approach and said, we've got a lot of resources and a lot of ideas for achieving what you want to achieve within this budget, and we're really excited to do it. We're excited about the project. We're excited about the partnership between Wiseburn and Da Vinci.
Absolutely.
And all of us were really impressed by not only the presentation itself, but the ideas that they brought to the committee, the suggestions that they had, and even just on a really functional level, the communicativeness. Judy knows how many times I was sending emails back and forth, especially as somebody that's new to the process. Like, I'm sorry, Judy, can you explain this to me again? And she was just fantastic. I mean, overall, they were all just tremendous in communicating with the committee, bringing their ideas to us and being enthusiastic about not only the project, but the partnership that we have.
Thank you.
I just wanted to add a comment as well. I wanted to take an opportunity to welcome Bob, Doug, and Judy as well. I'm going to hold off on my congratulations after we formally approve the board item. But I also wanted to just commend the process that was just shared in terms of the RFQ process. And Steve, I commend you. You did a very good job as a project manager. You know, perhaps, you know, Roger, you and I should have a conversation later.
I will admit this is my first rodeo, so I'm grateful for the way that Judy and the SVA team they've been patient with me and super helpful along the process.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
Any further thoughts or comments from Steve or our architects?
Can I ask a quick question? Can I just add, Steve, last night at the board meeting, you did show the footprint. Is there a way that do you have access to that? I know you're on I don't know how you're navigating through the slide deck, but if it's possible,
I got it. Give me just a second here.
And as you're looking, just to clarify, we will address this in item 7.1, which is down the road a bit here. But it is at this point just approving the architects and the design that will be paid for entirely by the Da Vinci board and team, Da Vinci organization.
That's right. So are you able to see my screen here, Blake?
Yes.
In this particular diagram, up on your screen is due west. And so we've got the existing school facility, and just west of the building here, we've got, the idea was to kind of recapture space that isn't being used kind of as ideally as possible, just to the west of the building, having a taller hangar structure where construction can take place indoors, and some workshop space over there. The current right now on the other side of this are where we kind of keep the dumpsters and the maintenance area over there on the back side of the building. Is that the diagram you were looking for there, Blake?
I love this diagram. I also like the picture. Do you have the picture that you could bring up too?
Absolutely. So this is the picture at Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. It's the Simpson Strong Tie building. This is kind of the idea that we had in mind that was sort of the inspiration for the project. Something that is really multifunctional, super simple in terms of design, and really versatile. Could be used for a lot of different things, be it some of the robotics work we do, some of the tiny house construction work we do. But Cal Poly, you know, they use this for job fairs as well. I mean, they do a ton of different things, and this is also a teaching structure. You can see some of the Simpson, structures off to the left of that. This is their construction architecture classes actually use this building as an instructional facility as well for their construction architecture program. So this is the kind of thing that we have in mind. And Bob and Doug and Judy promised we could have one of these just like this.
Well, might not look exactly like that, but we'll certainly go that direction. Yeah, I actually very familiar with the project. I'm a San Luis Obispo graduate myself, and so I'm up there quite a bit and supporting their programs up there. But we're familiar with this building. It's pretty spectacular and very useful, you know, as Steve describes.
Steve, can you put back up the location again? It's my understanding there was some conversation regarding alternative locations.
Yeah, part of the conversation we've been.
Sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Steve, I'm sorry. I didn't mean I think maybe that picture, you know, the picture, it's this picture, but it's the actual photo that yeah, there you go. That may be easier to explain from there.
You bet.
Okay.
So part of the conversation is in this area behind the amphitheater, underneath, and I sent over to SVA today, we were able to get a PDF of the utilities that are below the surface there. But we received an estimate of $300,000 for site prep, which included the movement of some of the utilities there that run east-west from the building out towards where those blue storage containers are. And so part of the conversation is, moving the position possibly of some of that shop space, or redesigning the shop space so that it has the same functionality, but doesn't require the movement of utilities. That's moving those utilities is a lot of money, and we'd love to use that, above the ground if possible. And so, Bob, I'll pass it off to you. You know more about this than I do.
Yeah, no, that's obviously the critical part of this budget, is to see if we can maximize the dollars, not only in soft costs, but also, as was described when we came into the RFP, it was discussed about the $300,000 for moving utilities. Obviously, if we can avoid it, the better, but we don't want, so, the goal is to minimize our demolition, and the goal is to avoid utilities. And if we can do both of those things, that money can come back into the main budget and we can maximize our design. So that would be certainly a goal of ours.
So Robert, if I may, is then part of our your services in designing consideration of location as well?
Yeah, I think I think you'll want to use us for that, certainly, and we'll make our recommendations. Obviously, we'll want your feedback, with the ability to do that. We already were doing a little bit of sketching on this today, so that was presumptuous of us, but we were toying around with it today, back and forth between Doug and ourselves. So, yes, the answer is we'll work with you guys to make sure that we maximize the value of the project, or the budget for the project, and if it comes to positioning the buildings, I think it'll be worthwhile for you in the long run.
I have a question about access to that part of the site for what appears to be major construction. Is that, you've probably taken that into consideration already? Or I guess that's a question. Is the access, where is the access to bring and to stage all of this construction?
You mean staging for construction?
Yeah, to bring in the materials and to actually do the staging.
Yeah. We'll have to, you haven't even signed us up yet, but
well, but you probably thought about it.
Oh, yeah, and that's my point.
That's what I would like to hear from you.
We'll sit down and work out the staging for construction. We clearly would want to leave contractor an opportunity for that. We also want to keep the children safe, right? That's real critical in this whole development of it. Is
part of the reason for my question is I happen to work at Millennium Space Systems, which is right adjacent to the site. And I know they're going to be doing some construction in the near future as well. And I just was asking because we've got two things going on at the same time. It would be good to talk about timing and so on between the two organizations, I think.
Sure. I think coordination with that will be really important as we move along. Obviously, we're probably 6 months away from being into DSA. DSA will take a few months for approval.
Sure.
That'll give some good timing for us. And, I look at construction, depending on how we deliver the project, could be 8 to 10 months. So that gives you some rough ballpark in developing this project.
Okay, thanks.
Additional comments or questions for our guests?
None for me. Thank you, Neil.
All right. Well, thank you all for your presentation, for your work on this, and exciting project for us.
Okay, well, thank you. We appreciate, hopefully, the opportunity.
Thank you very much. We appreciate you guys.
You bet.
Thank you.
Be well.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
All right,
Thank
let us now return to item 3.2, our public hearing on the Educator Effectiveness Grant. Let us open this public hearing at 6:28 p.m. And I believe, Dr. Harbeck, you will take us through this if I'm not mistaken.
Thank you, Dr. Goldman. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. We put together just a very short couple of slides to walk through the educator effectiveness grants. So I'm just going to go ahead and share. So tonight we wanted to provide a brief overview of this very important grant that we are receiving. It's an educator effectiveness block grant. I'm going to start by having Dave just explain how this grant came to be.
Thank you, Dr. Harbeck. So the state of California allocated $1.5 billion to California school districts to be spent over the course of 5 fiscal years, so 2021-22 through 25-26. The allocations were based on FTE, which is full-time equivalent, both certificated and classified personnel counts. Our preliminary entitlement is $549,642, so we rounded up to about $550,000. And the schedule of the allocations, how it's going to be distributed, the apportionment schedule is not yet determined, but we do think we will receive a good portion of that grant in the current fiscal year. So that's kind of the nuts and bolts of the finance aspect of this grant.
Thank you, Dave. And you know, this grant does require a public hearing and also later an approval by our school board. So there are, this block grant is for professional development specific to that for certificated and classified staff members. The grant does identify specific focus areas from beginning teacher induction to effective instruction and positive school climate. And so there you see just some of those allowable areas that we wrote the grant towards. Our focus areas in Wiseburn provide for the continuation of professional development opportunities for our teachers and our classified staff that support our ongoing focus on personalization of learning for all of our students here through a tiered support system. The specific training we offer in Writer's Workshop, Second Step for our social emotional learning program, and support for teachers to gather during their what's called teacher collaboration time to plan for the unique needs of their students are represented in this grant. This emphasis on professional development promotes individualized instruction and meeting students where they are in their learning. And this is all key to the planned expenditures in this grant. So if you see, we've offered some areas that we've provided along the way to include both our instructional aides and our teachers. So tonight is our public hearing, and we have posted the plan on the board agenda for easy access. We'll come back to you in December for approval based on any input that we receive. Okay, and that's it. Thank you. Any questions tonight?
I just have a comment, compliments to you and the team, Dr. Harbeck, and the emphasis on the MTSS personalization for students. And it's my understanding we have an opportunity in particular to emphasize improvement in math, which of course seemed to take the biggest hit from COVID. I just want to validate that with you.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, this is really exciting because you get to start a program that continues over a few years, so you can really take stock of the program and make improvements or changes and sort of adjust along the way. It's not a one-shot deal, so this is really great.
It's exciting.
Yeah, very exciting.
Right.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you to the state of California for allocating this money and making it available.
Yes, indeed.
Let us now see if there's any public comments at this time.
Public comments this time.
Well, hearing no public comments, then we will close this public hearing at 6:33 p.m. this evening. Let us now move to item 3.4, the second of our two special presentations. Doctors Silver and Ingram will present an update on the CAC committee, the renaming status of our schools.
I believe, Dr. Ingram, you're going to bring up the slide deck. Is that right?
Yes.
And nice to see you, Dr. Ingram.
Good to see you all. Thanks for having me.
All right. So tonight we will have a short presentation on the renaming process. It is a special presentation because, not just because it's named a special presentation, but because, this is really a special time in the history of, a school district. Really, if you look across up and down the state or across the country, there's just very, very few. This is once in a generation, as some people have called it, where you're at least taking stock of names and whether there's a choice to rename or a decision, to rename or not. It's really once in a generation type event and undertaking. And so, definitely we're looking as we move forward to move slow and not fast, just to, sort of measure twice and cut once and make sure that we're getting all of the information that we need and the data to the best of our ability so that we can provide that information to the board, who ultimately would make the decision as to whether or not schools would be renamed. And I just want to be clear about a couple things. And one is that there has been a decision to rename 138th Street School, the former Peter Burnett School. This board made that decision. We've actually covered up names on marquees and benches and those kinds of things. I would like to, we will officially actually have to mark that through a resolution that I'll bring to the board in December for that school in particular. But aside from that, I do want to acknowledge a couple things, and that's just the sentiment that goes along with the name of a school. And we know that schools carry a sense of emotion. The name of a school carries a sense of emotion for people, and rightfully so. This is a place that these are endearing places. We like that. The fact that people have strong emotions about their school means that the school's doing something right. And so, I just want to acknowledge that those people that have reached out to us individually, those people that have reached out to us in group, and maybe in the future will reach out to us in larger groups. We've seen it through our Citizens Advisory Committee to some degree. Yet we understand and validate the feelings that there may be there. And we understand that it's not all rooted in what maybe the namesakes have done wrong in the past or in the history, but really is rooted in the fact that there's a lot of good work that was done at these schools, and don't want to undermine that. And I think we've shared this at previous meetings, but just want to really reiterate the fact that we don't erase history by changing a name. We don't erase the good work that was done at schools should names be changed. That those names, those awards, the feelings, the comfort and learning that took place in those hallways, it's memorable. And I just wanted to highlight sort of the qualitative side of this. At the same time, just want to share that there has not been a decision by this board yet to rename the other three schools. There was a request and direction from this board to explore the namesakes, to do that to the best of our ability, and in so doing to convene a Citizens Advisory Committee that's run by myself. Dr. Ingram's been instrumental in helping support this process, and again, so that we could bring data back to the board for support, for deliberation, consideration, and then some direction and/or a vote. With that being said, district staff does not weigh in or vote on this process. This is a citizens or community process. This is the board's process. And so again, us facilitating this is just gathering as much information as possible to present. All right, so I will move on to the next, if we go to the next slide. So when we start talking about the renaming process, I know there's a lot here. I'm going to focus on the left side of this chart, and then Dr. Ingram is going to focus on the right. So I'm going to start in the green circle there. Is that when we look at the renaming process? Sorry, I apologize. So here's the green one. So when we start talking about, could you go back actually to just that initial? There we go. So when we start talking about the renaming process, this Venn diagram connection of circles here does indicate that there's several factors or several stakeholder groups that are really important to this process. So you have community members at large, then you have our Citizens Advisory Committee, it's a representative sample of community members, and then you have the Wiseburn School Board as the elected board that supports our schools. So we can now move on to the next, just so it's more clear. There we go. So the Citizens Advisory Committee, and again, this is the circle. It's just same circle, just larger so we could read it. the Citizens Advisory Committee does represent the community. These were folks that were selected by our principals through PTAs and site councils. We put notices out, and so people did express interest. And I believe at one point, Monique, I forget the number now. What did we have? And we do have the list here. We could actually bring that up. But what did we have? About 50 or so? Okay. And so it's a small group. Obviously, you know, to have 100 or 200 people in a group of this nature that's making decisions is difficult. So it does become a representative sample. We do have caregivers, parents, students, and Wiseburn employees that are part of this volunteer group. And again, they were recruited back in 2021, in the spring of 2021. And their job is to lead and engage. They take a lead role in researching information. Again, we provide information, but we also encourage that people on the Citizens Advisory Committee seek information on their own as well. It's a chance for people to learn. We do plan some next steps, which is to bring together maybe more information that we can put on our website as part of our portal, our renaming portal. I believe we'll bring that up here at one point, just so that the greater community as well as our Citizens Advisory Committee have access to as much information as possible. Part of it is informing the community. So part of the role of the Citizens Advisory Committee is to inform the community members and in turn provide information and or direct recommendations, to the Wiseburn School Board, just to help make informed decisions, and so that we have that information to do so. To promote engagement, and this is really critical when we're talking about such a historic moment, in a potentially historic moment in Wiseburn history. Just getting that feedback, being on part of this committee, so that, you know, going to neighbors and friends and classmates, families, just so that we're gathering this information that we need. Next door neighbors, like I said, it's just really important. So we're going to be reiterating this with the CAC as we move forward, just so that we could kind of come back to the center and really focus on what the purpose of the Citizens Advisory Committee is. And then ultimately from the Citizens Advisory Committee will be a recommendation to the Wiseburn School Board for consideration. All right, can go to the next. The second of the Venn diagram, the second bubble in the Venn diagram is community members. And again, learn is is the first sort of role of the community members, and that's through regular updates that are provided through district and school newsletters. Community members can learn more about this process, as well as have any of the materials that were provided to the CAC members. So we want to provide as many people through, whether it's through Nextdoor or through our homeowners associations, and through our e-blast, our electronic email system, our website, social media, that we're providing access and direction to our community members to learn more about the process and the materials that are involved in the process. And then the community members all have the ability to provide feedback to the district staff that would then be translated again to the board. So there's community surveys that are distributed regularly during this process, because we're looking to gather opinions. We're looking to gather perspectives, suggestions from families and students, alumni, employees, and community members. And I think as we look later on in this presentation, we've realized that there's probably some corners or some areas that we would want to enhance a little bit so we can gather more feedback. And then lastly is the school board. And again, for the Wiseburn School Board, it's to learn through regular presentations that we'll provide. Also, a couple members of the school board are on the Citizens Advisory Committee, so engaged in that process. And from data that we're able to provide to the board, we'll give more information for you all to consider any changes, should that be the direction we go. Also, to provide feedback. You know, as we provide data, as we provide the process, you know, definitely we're welcoming the direction and feedback, any other considerations that this board may want us to look at to help us continue moving forward through this process. And then ultimately, it does, as per board policy, it does ultimately fall at the hands of the 5 trustees to ultimately make a decision to change a name. And there you can see that's board policy 7310. That ultimately, once a name change resolution is presented to the board, that then this board would make that determination as a vote. All right, and I'll turn it over to you, Dr. Ingram.
Okay, so previously we outlined objectives through a flow chart to explain the renaming process. And while we'd like to make sure that there's structure, we also want to make sure that we are being flexible. And so instead of talking about objectives and a timeline, we'd like to present the same concepts through guiding questions and action steps. And so our first guiding question of kind of who should be involved in this resulted in the recruitment of our Citizens Advisory Committee members starting last year and then kind of just ending this fall. Next, we wanted to highlight our assurances. And so our assurances of safety, student-centered, future-ready, community, DEI, and organizational strengths, and how those assurances align with our current namesakes. And so to do that, our committee members focused on understanding the assurances, learning about the namesakes. We engaged in a presentation dialogue with a historian who is a professor at USC, Dr. Philip Ethington. And then our committee members, excuse me, had opportunities to meet in site-specific breakout rooms and engage in dialogue and an activity that helped them explore the alignment of our assurances and namesakes, which brought us to the next question, our fourth question of what are our community members thinking? So given the information that our CAC members were able to experience and providing that to our community members, what are the thoughts and perspectives of the broader community? And that's where we are now, where we'll be presenting data from our first community survey, which brings us to our next question of how can we improve our process of encouraging community members to participate in our surveys and through this process. And so we have some ideas to address that. As Dr. Silvers just talked about, revisiting kind of how we can promote engagement and empower our committee members to welcome people to complete the surveys and to provide feedback, to provide opportunities for public hearings, and then again, continuing with our community surveys. We'll continue to facilitate a process that's guided by our committee members, the board and the community, but ultimately we want to work towards the exploration of the type of recommending names for 138th Street, formerly Peter Burnett Elementary, and any other schools that it's determined should be renamed. Or if it's decided that schools will not be renamed, we would want to develop a statement affirming how that namesake aligns with our assurances. And so, as I mentioned, our committee has met twice and has worked through an activity that allowed them to see how to kind of discuss and identify how assurances align with our namesakes. I'll show you just kind of an example here of some of the work that the 138th Street group did. So each school site had a work group within our committee meetings where we identified the district's assurances and asked them guiding questions about how committee members could think about the history of the namesake and how that aligns with our assurances. And they were able to identify notes and then also additional notes that maybe weren't captured in the table that was presented. And so, if I won't go into much detail there, as we want to focus on other things. Oh, now I'm not in presenter mode anymore. Let's see if I can fix that. Okay, and so with 138th Street, after the first meeting, out of the 13 members who were a part of that discussion, 100% were in agreement that the name should be changed. After the second meeting, the schools of the three remaining school groups met and also kind of voted on a recommendation. And for Cabrillo, 100% of the members who were participating that day recommended a name change. For ANZA, 6 out of the 8 committee members who were participating that day recommended a name change. And for Dana, it was a very small group, but they also recommended a name change. The recommendation from our committee members from that meeting, interestingly, is not necessarily aligned with community survey results that we're seeing. So we had 120 survey participants that will be represented in the data that I'll talk about. Each participant was asked to self-identify a role of their relation to Wiseburn. So they were provided with 6 options. You see those here and the percentage of the breakdown of respondents who associated with those particular categories or those roles. The last percentage here, 25% of participants, I checked more than one box. So they identified as having more than one role. And so that's this breakdown here. Visually, we have a pie chart. So you can see that about 28.5% of people who responded to the survey were a parent or a caregiver of a currently enrolled student. Our next kind of largest piece here would be community members at 6.3%, followed by parents or caregivers of formerly enrolled students. So here you see that there are these pluses. These smaller pieces represent that 25% of the survey respondents who checked more than one box as their role. So previous students plus 7.3%. So those are people who said, you know, I'm a previous student, but I'm also these other things. We just kind of categorize them to better explain and capture the data. So I'll give you an example of what that breakdown might look like. So for previous student plus, that represents 2 participants who were previous students, community members, and also have students currently enrolled. 1 person who identified as being a previous student and as having a student currently enrolled. 1 person who reported being a previous student and having currently and formerly enrolled students and being a community member, and then 2 people who were previous students who had a student formerly enrolled. So they're kind of these pieces that were kind of too small to look at correlations with the data by themselves. And so we grouped them together in that way. There were 2 primary questions in the survey. One was for them to indicate the extent to which they agree that a namesake is someone who represents all of Weisburn's assurances. And so this statement was presented for each of the 4 schools. And they were also asked for the 3 schools. We didn't ask the second question for 138th Street, but they were asked, do you recommend that this school be renamed? We realized that when looking at someone's history, there's going to be pros and cons. And so for the first question, we didn't want to make it dichotomous. We imagined that people felt that there were positive and negative things about people. And so we wanted to capture or provide an opportunity for people to express that they might not be feeling absolute about that first question. But we did want more of a commitment to a yes or a no for the second question, just to gauge how people are feeling and what their opinions are, although there was an opportunity to provide a response to the second question of not sure or not having an opinion. Okay, and so here's a summary of the results. This slide represents the percentage of participants' responses for each question by school. So if you look at Cabrillo, we see that 48.8% of participants believe that the namesake aligns with Weisburn's assurances, and that 51.2% of participants believe that the namesake is not aligned with the assurances. The red and the blue lines are a bit redundant. Typically, we'd only include the blue, but we thought that it might be easier to interpret the data to present them both. The yellow line indicates that 38.2% of respondents recommend a name change, while the green line indicates that 49.6% of respondents do not recommend a name change for Cabrillo. And then 12.2% of respondents indicated that they are not sure or have no opinion. We see that in orange. So looking at this, we might expect that the percentage in blue and the percentage in green would align, that they'd be the same. But those who believe that the namesake aligns with the assurances would not recommend a change. We see that across the schools, the blue and the green pair and the red and the yellow pair are close in some instances, but there is variation. And I think this suggests that there may be more factors influencing people's decisions to recommend renaming or maintaining namesakes beyond just whether or not that namesake aligns with Weisburn's assurances. And so now I imagine you're looking at the data across the schools. At this point, you might be noticing similar trends across the schools with the data. And I'd like to just point out a few notes. Based on the community survey data, Dana received the most support to maintain its name at 60%. ANZA followed, but responses for Cabrillo and ANZA are kind of pretty close, almost split. Also, although our sample size is small, we wanted to be able to provide an idea of how the responses we've received so far break down by the self-identified roles that I described earlier. And so there is a table that people can look at if they're interested that breaks down all of those categories. So those 6 categories that I talked about that where people could identify how their role, what their role is with Weisburn, and then those groupings of the 25% of people who identified as being in multiple roles. And so it's interesting to look at. What is kind of notable is that we see for parents or caregivers of currently enrolled students across the board, for Cabrillo and ANZA at least, they're recommending 57%, 54% are recommending a name change. We see the higher trends also for Weisburn employees who identify as more than one, having more than one role. They have higher percentages for Cabrillo and ANZA as well in terms of yes. And then generally, the subgroups are, the majority of the subgroups are indicating a no for the name change. All right, I'm gonna go back to presenter mode. That kind of in a nutshell is the data. And as Dr. Silvers mentioned, we're learning a lot. And so he's going to talk about some of our next steps.
Thank you, Dr. Ingram. So just some moving forward, some next steps and considerations. First is wanting to reconvene the community advisory, the Citizens Advisory Committee. We do have a tentative meeting set for the 7th of December, 5:30 p.m. And what we want to do is really empower to review the roles, review the purpose of the renaming committee, of the Citizens Advisory Committee, and what their role can be out in the community. So we really want them to be empowered to recruit, to because there's both sides. It's not just recruiting the yeses, recruiting the nos, but it's just recruiting people to provide input behind the name change or about the name change. And it's to provide more opportunities for input, during the process, is that we know that we just want to gather more information. We want to gather more input. And also then it's creating a CAC toolkit. And this would include, I shared this a little bit earlier, this would include a series of, let's call it a library or a cache of resources that would be readily available for not only the CAC members, but also would be available for the greater public to view. And we would make that public on our website. We do have a portal on our website for renaming. Some considerations have to do with the factors that may influence name changing or renaming. And so, in addition to, Weisburn assurances. So it's come up, what is the financial impact of renaming? And this is, I think Dr. Goldman has asked this question and maybe others as well. I think Dave Wilson is on, and Dave, can you just give a little bit? I mean, we might as well just put it out there. I know we talked earlier today about it. Do you have a quick update on that? Just so it's...
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So a number of months ago, I met with a gentleman who works at a sign factory or a sign company out of San Pedro, and had him come out and give me a quote to rename or refabricate the signs at 138, our former Burnett. And it was to redo the marquee and then 2 bronze plaques. And the quote I recall was between $10,000 and $12,000. So a rough estimate moving forward, if we were to do all 4 schools, I think a safe estimate would be anywhere between $40,000 and $60,000. Again, that was a number of months ago with escalation and inflation. Not sure, but I think a safe estimate will be anywhere between 40 and 60K to rename all sites. Was that a good enough? Was that what you're looking for, Dr. Silvers?
Yeah, thanks.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. And then looking at different methods to reach the community, there's been talk of some paper trail, actually going back to some paper opportunities, whether it's kind of the old pin the note on the student's shirt or put a note in the backpack, so that we're making sure that we're getting information to as many people as possible and providing these opportunities. It could be through leaflets that go out to the different households in the community, knowing that this isn't just about our school community currently, but it's also there's a greater community involved in the decision-making process or in the input process. And then really important, and this has come up, we've had lots of conversations about this, is how do we involve students more? How do we have we're lucky enough to have a great partnership with Da Vinci Schools, and a lot of those students have come through and are alumni of Dana Middle School, of Anza, of Cabrillo, and we want them to be able to provide us with input as well. And so I know Dr. Ingram has worked or is in the process of working with Dr. Johnson over at Da Vinci Schools to find ways to involve them, as well as working with our principals to find ways to involve at the very least some of our upper elementary and middle school students, so that they can have a voice in this process as well. And so to continue forward, we want to have regular CAC meetings. We don't look at this as a fire right now. I think I speak in Mr. Mora's terms. I mean, I think this isn't a fire. This is really us doing due diligence here to have as many meetings as we can to gather input so that we can make the best recommendation and or provide the best data to the board to make a decision. Again, collecting data regarding survey number 1, we want to keep that open. We did not close that survey. We do want to have that next CAC meeting. We want to continue to do these other steps to empower our community to share their voice and to keep that survey open so that we can continue to collect data. And then providing continuous updates to the board. Also with the resolution, we like to bring a resolution to the December board meeting. And that's more of a procedural in nature, is that we want to have, eventually we would have potentially a resolution for 4 schools, or could have a resolution for 4 schools, but the decision was already made for the renaming of Peter Burnett. This would allow us to move past that process in the renaming of Peter Burnett, the former Peter Burnett School, and will allow us to plan next steps for the Citizens Advisory Committee and those members that are representing Peter Burnett, because we could parse them out into other groups as well, because their information and their input is important as it relates to other schools as well. And then we would like to hold a public hearing at a regularly scheduled board meeting in January of 2022. We'll post it. As many avenues as we can. We'll have a small presentation by then as well, maybe updated data, so we can present that to the board first. The board can hear that and then open it up to public comment. And again, not in no way trying to stymie the public's opinion. Really want to encourage people in the public to come out and share their opinion with this board and with staff, so that we can help support this process. So those are our next steps. Is that the last slide, Dr. Ingram? Are there any questions? A lot of information, I know.
Thoughts from the board? Questions?
I don't have a question. I just have a comment. Go ahead, Roger.
Yeah, Dr. Ingram, can you please bring up the slide? I had that had the questions that were posed to the community. Because obviously we see a difference between the CAC, which is more the group that has spent significant amount of time in meetings and discussions, right? And the community, this was a survey, correct? So my question is regarding item number 1. It says namesake is someone who represent all of Weisburn USD's assurances. So is this the actual question that was posed to the community?
Yes, so, but instead of namesake is replaced with the school.
Right.
name. Yes.
So I guess what I'm trying to understand is maybe why do we have such a difference from the CAC to the community? Were the assurances in the survey explained as to the individual, as like we were talked about earlier, say our assurances for safety, diversity, equity, and inclusion? I mean, was that captured in the survey? Because I have a concern with that, because if this is exactly how it was worded, did our community know what assurances were?
It's possible they didn't. So the instructions in the survey, there were instructions in the survey that asked survey participants to review the materials, so to review the assurances, to review the notes for the CAC meetings, right? But the information wasn't placed in the actual survey. And so the survey participant could choose to kind of not review that information if they didn't want to, or to review it. So I think there's a possibility that some survey participants maybe didn't review that information. But I think another piece in what we saw, there was a difference in the conversations between with our committee members from the first meeting to the second meeting. And after community members had a chance to hear other perspectives and maybe see things from a different view, some committee members' votes actually changed. So I think there is an advantage, or maybe not an advantage, but definitely an opportunity for learning to be able to engage in conversation about some of these topics.
Got it. Now, and then that's, I think, the intrinsic challenge with the survey. It's more of a snapshot, right? It's pick one of these, like here you have a scale 1 to 4 and things like that. So it's really fast. Doesn't lend itself for, it's very important, but it doesn't lend itself for a little bit more dialogue on such an important topic because it's quick, just the nature of the outreach. But we definitely want input from our community and the CAC members. I'm just trying to understand what the results are, because when you see a difference like that, I want to make sure that we're taking it into account and factoring it in so that we're fair to the whole process. So thank you for that.
Thanks.
Dr. Ingram, too, just out of curiosity, and I know it's in the survey, though, there was direction to links that had the information. So it wasn't, it just wasn't directly, it wasn't explicit in the survey, but it was a click away, right?
Right.
Okay, good.
Ms. Martinez, I think you had a comment.
I didn't have a question. I had a quick comment. I wanted to thank Dr. Silvers and Dr. Ingram for really spearheading this process. I appreciate the work that's gone into it. The development of the committees, the flyers. I did get a chance to see Dr. Etherington's video, which I think was very informative. The more information that we provide, as kind of Roger just alluded, to our community, the better response we're going to get. So I do agree here, and I appreciate the seriousness, the formality, and also, as Blake said, really taking our time here on this process. I think this is really important. This doesn't happen often at all, this renaming process. So I really appreciate the time that we're taking and the seriousness and the formality of it. And I think as Roger just pointed out, I think I definitely want to see more community input, and I think both of you are working on that. How we recruit, I guess, if you will, or how we do that is always a challenge. But I just want to thank you both for the hard work and effort. I think we're doing it right, and it's important to really take our time on this, because at the end of the day, we really want that community and input, and our community is unique. It is pretty large. It's the Weisburn community, it's the students, it's the employees, the staff, and so forth. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Martinez.
So I have a question. And obviously, thank you very much to Dr. Silvers, Dr. Ingram. Really appreciate all this effort. It's a huge amount of work to cull through all that data and put it together in a presentation. So thank you. Independent of the results of the survey, however, have we already decided to rename Peter Burnett? So
Yes.
I'm not sure why we're asking the community that question if that's a foregone conclusion.
I think we were just trying to gather input as best as possible, just to the formality of renaming a school. And again, having not gone through this before, the formality of renaming a school requires input from a citizens advisory committee. And so that's why I feel the next step would be to bring the actual official resolution. So we did that. We had the citizens advisory committee host the board's vote, but then we'd bring a resolution back to the board. It did come back overwhelmingly that the community was in favor of changing that name as well, but we would want to bring that resolution back, which would actually officially make it name change, if that makes sense, officially make it on the docket to have the name changed. We missed the resolution part.
Like, I thought we actually had done that or taken a board action and vote. Did we not do an actual resolution? I think we actually did take a vote.
We did take a vote. We took a vote.
Oh, okay.
So,
Just want to make
now
sure
we
we're
would just
talking the
bring
same
a
thing.
resolution back. Yeah.
I'm
So
still
the
confused.
resolution would commemorate the action? Is that
exactly
essentially what it is?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So it did come before the board and we took a vote to change Peter Burnett and we temporarily assigned 138th Street. What you're sharing with us is we need to, the next step is to bring it as a formal resolution to commemorate the vote?
Correct.
Okay, so it sounds like, Joanne, we should have had a resolution at the time that we took
Yes.
the vote. So to do it together versus separate. So we're doing a little bit of catch up.
Right. Yes, we're out of order a little bit and we're going to get the other ones in order. We should have had a resolution. We probably should have brought a resolution back to the, gotten direction and then brought a resolution to the next board meeting and voted on it. We just, again, just sort of learning as we're going here, but now we know. And we'll bring that resolution, and then future out, we'll make sure that we'll have the resolutions ready if that's how it turns out.
So the future resolutions will be based on the input we're getting from the surveys and the committee action, the citizens committee and so on.
Yes and no. It's basically this board will determine whether we bring the resolution. So we'll present the data from the Citizens Advisory Committee and the community, but this board could take the action that they see fit based on the data and on conversations you all may be having outside of that. So it's ultimately this board's decision.
Okay.
We're just providing the data.
Okay, I understand. Thank you.
And then if I could just add, some of the feedback that we were getting was that some community members are not understanding kind of why we're having this conversation or why 138th Street is being renamed. And so part of the conversation that we wanted to have in our committee was kind of understanding the history, including 138th. And then we wanted the questions that we discussed in our committee meetings to align with what we asked our community. And so that's why we've had the question about kind of what community members think the alignment with Peter Burnett and our assurances are. But we didn't ask the second question of whether or not community members think that 138th Street should be renamed because the decision had already been made.
And people understand the question is not about whether 138th Street is the right name, but whether Peter Burnett is the right name.
Right.
It is a little bit confusing there too.
Yes, we noted that in the survey.
Okay.
So I too want to thank you both for leading this. This is it's a monumental decision, right? There's so much emotion involved in this. It's who's emblematic, who's representative. You have the history. There's so much involved here. I'm wondering if I'd like to see us be as informed as we can. Not only that, but also those who are involved in the survey, much like Roger was representing or referencing, to be as informed as possible. And I'm wondering if a model such as that is done in our general elections, where there is a pro and a con, that's as tried to be as unbiased as possible, just giving the pros and cons to give people more insight to make this choice, might not only be helpful on the survey, but ultimately be created from the comments from the CAC and the survey respondents for us to have a pro and con as well. So we're as involved in understanding the thinking here and removing emotionality to the best extent possible. Your thoughts?
Dr. Ball, are you asking a staff or?
Yeah, I guess Dr. Silvers, does that make sense to you? I guess is my question. Sorry.
Yeah, I think I would want to parse that out a little bit more. I think I'm following. I think I'd want to maybe have some more dialogue just to make sure I'm understanding you exactly what you're asking for. But I understand the idea of a pros and cons list and developing that. Yes.
Yeah, just so people are informed.
Makes sense.
And we're informed why. What are the concerns on one side? What are the pros and cons on both sides? Just to get a sense of where people.
Well,
are.
I think that's what you were doing in the context of the assurances, right?
Right.
Yes.
Right. And then in trying to provide notes from the meetings. And one thing that we discussed with Ms. Porter, our communications consultant, was kind of how, or is there a way, and would it be beneficial to condense the information, right? So maybe instead of the hour-long presentation that Dr. Ethington presented, to show highlights. And so people can watch like a 5-minute clip or a 10-minute clip instead of an hour-long clip. And that might entice them to kind of review the information more thoroughly.
So Neil, when you're asking for pros and cons, in what context? I mean,
I'd like to hear the rationale. Sorry, Joanne, I'll let you finish.
yeah. No, go ahead. The rationale
I'd like to hear the rationale. If somebody is really in favor of it, what's their rationale? If someone is really against it, what's their rationale? I'd like us to understand, not just, I appreciate they voted this way or that way, but I'd like to, if this is a big decision, I'd like to be informed as to why they're feeling the way they are, why they're voting the way they are. So we have the insights to make the decision.
Separate from the context of the assurances?
Well, yeah, I think so. I think the assurances ask the question because that may not be a compelling issue for some people.
Okay.
I think it would be helpful. I mean, survey participants were able to provide comments in their responses if they wanted to type something in. And a lot of some of them just kind of stated things like, we shouldn't be talking about this, and didn't provide much insight into why people were voting the way they did. But others, Dr. Silver's already mentioned, so there's a sentimental attachment, and so they don't want to rename. Some are concerned about the financial obligation. There were some suggestions to just shorten the names, and so it kind of like compromises the best of both worlds. And then on the other end also, some people were happy that we were having the conversation and felt like there were links to kind of sense of belonging, and some even mentioned racism in their comments that they're happy to see this conversation happening. So we do have kind of that little insight, but that's kind of the extent of the comments that were shared.
Dr. Ingram, do we have, I just have one quick question. Do we have any idea in terms of Dr. Ethington's video? Because I do agree with you, it was a pretty long video. And there might be, not to discuss this now, but there might be a way to capture highlights from that video and shorten it and provide that information to the community at large. The question I had is, do we have any idea how many people did view the video or did see the video? Do we have any kind of data on that?
So I do from early on. So the survey was open has been open a little over a week, maybe almost 2 weeks at this point. Probably the first half of the time that the survey was open, there were maybe 23 or so people who had viewed it, and a small percentage of that actually made it to the end. Some people only watched most people only watched the first couple of minutes.
Okay. Thank you,
Dr. Ingram and Blake. I also would like to thank you for all the hard work and effort that's gone into this process. It's obviously a monumental task. I did have an opportunity to watch the entire video of Dr. Philip Ethington, and I really like the fact in terms of his credentials as a historian, knowing the knowledge, because it's a lot of the information is not readily available. I mean, people can do Google searches and things like that on their own, but I thought having an expert in history provide a reference or an opportunity for community members to ask questions. I thought the video or the event or the meeting was great. It was about an hour, so yes, it's long. Maybe if we could make it available for the first 30 minutes of his presentation portion of it, because people can see it and reflect. Obviously, people can watch the whole thing, but I thought it was nicely done and a way to bring an impartial view of history, what these individuals represent. So thank you for doing that.
Thank you, Roger. And I do want to share too that Dr. Effington has no connection whatsoever to anybody in Wiseburn. We were actually just lucky enough to secure someone who was interested because of his interest in California history and particularly his interest in the greater LA area and so forth. We just were lucky. I mean, honestly, I just have to say we were lucky to have a connection who knew him, who knew, sort of 6 degrees of separation. And he was willing to undertake this. And he also has name-changing, I don't want to say experience, because they went through the same process at USC, at one of the buildings there at USC. So he also has just gone through that. I don't think they've released the name, but they are renaming VKC, which is one of the buildings there. And so he was part of that process as well. So it's kind of a perfect, not even a storm, but it just was a great scenario for someone to come in with the knowledge and expertise to help provide this for us information.
All right. And for any of those who have not seen the video, we encourage you to do so. It is informative and just gives us greater insight on this decision.
Is the video linked obviously on the website or?
Yes, I can actually show that. So anyone who's interested in more information, oops, the slides aren't advancing. Let's get back here. Okay, there's all the same information. So wiseburn.org /renaming, people can find out information about our Citizens Advisory Committee, get updates from our previous meetings, and then scrolling down to here, they can get notifications as soon as there are updates available about this process. And so wiseburn.org /renaming is where it is kind of the hub where anyone would go who needs information.
That's awesome. Thank you very much.
All right. Any final thoughts here? And I know there's more to come, but thank you for this time. All right. Well, again, Dr. Ingham, Dr. Silvers, thank you very much. We will now move forward to, once again, Dr. Silvers and updates on our 4.1 district updates on facilities and the Recreation and Community Committee.
Yeah, so I'm going to start just by I'm going to pass off to Dave at one point here to give an update on the old Dana site. I think now would be the appropriate time to do that. Before that, I do want to share with this board, and this kind of combines the recreation and the facilities into one. Because we had an opportunity, Dave, myself, and Jonathan Nava, had a chance to meet with some of the key leaders over at the County Parks and Recreation as we're trying to find ways to utilize the space behind the Del Air site, also to take a look at our MOU. And we just wanted, it was a meet and greet more so, and kind of to throw some ideas, across the table and see what the interest was with LA County LA County Parks and Recreation. And I should say there was a lot of interest in collaboration. I mean, clearly they want to still have access to the gymnasium. They want to have access to the tennis courts. And, in turn, we would like access and some sort of exclusive use of potentially the baseball field to the south, I'm going to call it the southwest corner of that Del Air site. And so, they actually asked us to present a proposal. So and this was just a few days ago, we had this meeting. So really excited. I thought it was a very positive, productive meeting, collaborative meeting, and definitely the people in the room were the people that are the decision makers in this process. They even sent us some specs in terms of I think they call them design specs, is maybe, I hope that's the right term. So that as we start looking at maybe if it's constructing a CIF sanctioned field or a 50-70, 60-90 type baseball field, that we do so with the appropriate specs. So it balls in our court at this point, and I am interested in the board's feedback, but I think what I would like to do is bring a draft back to this board at another time. We would do that in closed session with an attorney, so that we would initially, because it would be a contract, but present that to this board, probably following the same model we did with the agreement with the city of El Segundo and the aquatic center, is some sort of exclusive use time if we're to put money into the field to allow it to be home, that we have access to it for X amount of hours per day. So the high school could play there, home games could be played there, as well as providing opportunities should CIF playoffs come into play, or any type of CIF games where it may be sort of on a dime that we need to utilize the field, that we do have that access. So we talked about all of this, and there was no reticence on the part of the county. I think they saw it as a win-win. So want to just share that. It avoids any type of, I know there've been conversations at least floating over the years that they brought up about land swaps. I think it takes that out of the equation and does more of a joint use type, or an exclusive joint use type opportunity. So just wanted to share that. And again, of course, we'll bring this back to the board, certainly for direction.
Dr. Silver, did they, and if this is inappropriate, please just say no, but did they share any openness or willingness to invest in the property with us on this?
So we didn't ask that yet. So my take is no. I'll just say that just to be candid. I didn't see, I think that they would like us to take the lead. There was some indication they took the lead initially and built the tennis courts, and I know they redid some of the parking lots. They also built the gymnasium. This was back in when this initial MOU was created, some 50 years ago. So I think they're looking more at a model that looks like that, where we would build the field, but then we could develop the terms of agreements of use.
Do they maintain the gymnasium and the tennis courts and so on?
They do.
Okay.
And that also came into our conversation as well, was, obviously we'd have to work out who would maintain it, because, if they're willing to maintain it, which Dave, correct me if I'm wrong, but I do believe there was some maybe intimation that they would maintain the field to some degree. Did I miss that?
I picked that up as well. Correct.
Because they want to use it as well. They have groups that use it in the evenings. I know they have interest in using it after 5:30 or 5 o'clock for some travel teams. I think they rent it out to. But again, wanting to make sure we have some exclusive time daily for either our high school and or little leagues to utilize it as well. And it could come into that whole facility being a baseball facility that we have greater conversations about. So lots to talk about, but lots of positive things. I just wanted to share that it is an update and it's something that's come up. And I wish I had some more clear-cut answers to that. I just am more excited about the openness. And I would thank Supervisor Mitchell's office for connecting us with the right people. I know she was on our last board meeting, and really within a couple of days we had a meeting scheduled. So I just want to thank the supervisor for that. And if there's no questions about that, good news or good momentum, I'll turn it over to Dave for a quick update on the old Dana site.
Thank you. So Erickson Hall, the construction management firm, has made quick progress of the demo of all the buildings. I don't know if you've driven by or had the opportunity to driven by lately, but every building is down. They're starting the demo on the hardscape, like the asphalt, the concrete planters, things like that. The IT building has been relocated to be now behind the maintenance building. The IT will be ready for move-in the week after Thanksgiving. They're still on schedule for a mid to late December completion date. And the good news is that there's right now no cost overruns on the allowances that we have built into each of the contracts. So all things looking good, and excited to put this project behind us come mid to late December.
That is wonderful news. Thank you.
Great job, David and team.
Have
pleasure.
we gotten into the ground at all to make sure there's no dirt issues as in the past? Do we know that yet?
They've been directed not to go down, go down as much as they need to go down. So they weren't exploring down below, 8 to 10 inches.
I'm good. I just want to make sure we've gotten that. So this is having been in the dirt a little bit. That's great.
Yes,
that was the biggest concern. That's terrific.
You know,
Thank
the
you.
unfortunate part, Dr. Goldman, is at one point we will dig down into that dirt and find out more about it. But I mean, at this point, we are looking good. And I should give my hats off. I don't think that nobody's on from Erickson Hall, but just publicly to say we're very professional, very responsive. You know, we've had to reach out to them. I know Dave's reached out to them. I've reached out to them. I mean, it is a very responsive organization. Those people that are running it, you know, my hat's off to them, and it's just been very professionally done. So figured I'd give them some public kudos.
Yeah, I wanted to also thank Dave and obviously Blake. I know you've been involved as well, and Erickson Hall. That landscape there at 135th and Aviation has changed rapidly. So I only had one quick comment: is I see a little building in the middle there, real small. Is that the IT building that you're referring to that maybe will get demoed later, or is that something else there? There's a real tiny building right kind of in the middle there.
You know what, Nelson, I'm not sure. Let me drive by and check with the team tomorrow, and I'll email the board. I'm not sure which building may be maintaining, but I'll double check tomorrow.
Yeah, you'll see it. It's just very small one in the middle. I thought it was an IT. I think, Roger, you probably thought the same thing. So
you know what? It could be the Southern California Edison. Yeah. They have a vault there. It might be that vault.
Okay.
Let me double check.
So that will probably stay there.
Yes, it's the vault, and I think that they are keeping that. They did share with the board. They were going to keep that there for now until future plans are determined. Just wasn't worth the cost of breaking that down. And I don't even know that you all would know better than me what that would entail. But that's what I believe it is. No, the IT was a trailer. It was one of the trailers we owned, and it occupied a space on that facility. We had to relocate it to the shop just so that they could do this work, and we'll reload. And in the meantime, the IT department is working out of the library at Dana, one of the rooms off the library at Dana. So after Thanksgiving, we'll be able to begin the process of moving them back into the trailer, the modular.
Perfect. Thank you.
Comment on the demo here as we move forward. Obviously, the buildings are gone. Just one of the lessons learned as we were moving forward with the construction of the Weisburn High School. If you recall, there was an instance at one point when we were building the project where we had to relocate an electrical power pole. And I believe it was Southern California Edison actually gave away or reassigned the electrical power rights to that site. We went through a very lengthy process to reacquire the electricity for the Weisburn High School, and it cost quite a bit of money. So maybe a conversation is needed with Southern California Edison that there will be a future project there at some point. So do not give away the electricity capacity, if you will, that we already have assigned. There should be a conversation there soon, just so that they don't give it up, because once the demand drops, they might reassign it, and then we're going to have to pay to bring it back. So if we can please take a look at that, I think that just would behoove us to see what we can do.
Dave, can you get clarity on that? Because I do believe Erickson Hall did share with us that that's part of the reason they weren't going to knock down the vault, but can you, and they wanted to make sure we maintain utility. But I think it's a good point. Let's just verify that with them.
Absolutely, and we have a contact at Southern California Edison, and we'll definitely share those sentiments with them and make sure that they quote unquote reserve that power for future use. So absolutely.
Thank you.
Yep.
Anything else on 4.1 or 4.2, Dr. Silvers? And thank you, Dave.
No, nothing else for me, Dr. Goldman. Thank you.
All right, moving to 5, information 5.1 from the board. Mr. Martinez, let's start with you, please.
Thank you, Dr. Goldman. I just wanted to, I added a few of my comments already previously, but I just wanted to take a moment to thank Dr. Dougal and Fulgent for bringing the pediatric and booster clinics right here in our backyard at Weisburn. I think it's been great. I had a chance to visit the clinic and saw the families with the kiddos because now the 5 and 12-year-olds have been approved. So I just thank you for bringing that here home. I know it's very convenient to our community and to our family. So thank you very much. I know that's a lot of hard work and coordination that's taking place. So thank you. And just one more item that I really wanted to mention is I wanted to congratulate the Da Vinci volleyball high school girls, the varsity team. Boy, it was some exciting volleyball. If you guys do not know, our Da Vinci high school girls went to the championship in the sectionals and lost. Yeah, very close game in the sectionals to an undefeated team, to a team that had not lost a game. I believe it was Santa Clarita Christians, if I recollect properly. But they played so well that they were invited to the state champs and to the state tournament, and they actually went to the semifinals in the state championships before they lost. And in both of those losses, they took it to the very end. They went 5 games. So phenomenal volleyball, and congratulations to them. They obviously represented us well. And then I just wanted to take an opportunity as we approach the holidays to wish everybody and their loved ones a happy Thanksgiving. That's all I have tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Martinez. Dr. Dougal, before we move on, will you be presenting the dates for the next Fulgent opportunities in your presentation?
Yes.
All right, then we'll hold there and we'll get to you. Mr. Mora, let's turn to you.
I did get a chance to attend the volleyball game that Nelson was talking about, and it was a lot of fun. It was good to see, the community out, the spirit. The ladies played great, went to 5 sets, and they lost a nail biter. So that close to being CIF champions. That was pretty impressive. And are they still competing in state, Nelson? Do you know? Or I know they advanced to state. They got selected as a wild card. And
yeah, they advanced to state, and they actually went to the semifinals.
Wow.
And lost in a nail biter as well in 5 games.
Yeah, quite an impressive team and a lot of fun. And I just wanted to just thank the staff for all the hard work. I know that this is another tricky year, and everybody's got a lot on their plates, but I thank the administration and the teachers and Custodio and all our helpers and everybody who's trying to do the best that we can. I would like Dr. Silvers to mention one more time that, through COVID, more than ever, there's been kids that fall behind, and I want to make sure we're looking for them and trying to make sure they don't fall through the cracks, and that we're really focused on that, catching them up from the last year and a half. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mora. Ms. Canetta.
Good evening, everyone. I wanted to commend once again the demolition of what we've called fondly Old Dana at 135th and Aviation. What a milestone for our district. It's been a long time in coming, and to have done it while school was in session safely and with the prevailing westerly wind here, without having dust all over the neighborhood any more than we already get from the quarry, it's been quite an achievement. And I have to say, I was one of the doubting folks here that it could be done as well as it's been. And so kudos to our folks who are doing the work. Kudos to our team who's managing it. It was odd. We had a question from someone during the demolition when we were going to do the demo. So I hope so. I hope the response was just, oh, take a little walk around the neighborhood and you'll see. So just pretty exciting. Anyway, thank you for that. Also, and I want to kind of echo, I guess, what Mr. Morris said too, and also Mr. Martinez, that in this time of COVID and all the, I don't know, how shall I say, emotion and concern and worry and the surrounding emotions that go along with the pandemic, I guess, that we've managed to be a school district that can stay strong, that evaluates alternatives, makes decisions that are best for kids and community, and continues to do that. So very proud of our team, all of our team, for making those decisions and following through with those decisions. I think it's gratifying. And happy Thanksgiving to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Joanne. Mr. Banuelos.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Neil. A couple of comments today. I wanted to first just start off by thanking Miss Amanda Steen, our teacher at 138th Street. She sent us a great invitation to attend the 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade Native American exhibit. that they usually have at 138th Street. Having 4 sons that went through 138th Street, I've had the privilege of working on bow and arrows myself as a father-son project for school. So it's very, very rewarding to be a part of that. The entire exhibit and the process is really a celebration of culture, which is why I wanted to make a comment about that, because it's very important, very appropriate during the time that we're talking about school renaming and what that represents. We celebrate the culture in our schools for Native American, Indigenous peoples' history, yet we have some school sites and named after certain folks that sought to abolish that entire tradition and culture. So I'm actually looking forward to the future as to what it could be. And I know we've already decided to rename 138th. So for community members that may ask why 138th was already decided, that's a small part of the reason why that school has already been decided to be renamed. So again, thank you, Ms. Amanda Steen, for that invitation. Brings back memories, that's for sure. Next item I wanted to touch base on is Dr. Silvers, if I can please have an update in terms of our choice block enrollment, how that ended up for the year now that the choice blocks have officially been incorporated into the Wiseburn Unified School District. I think we're moving towards a process now of those, I believe it was about 400 homes or so, with full acceptance and inclusion into the Wiseburn Unified School District. So for me moving forward, that'll probably be the last time I refer to them as the choice blocks, other than in history, in terms of the Wiseburn history of how they ended up joining us, because those blocks are Wiseburn, and I'm very proud to welcome them into the Wiseburn Unified School District. So I'd like to still stay on top of like how that transition is working out for the students and the families. And last item for me, wanted just to thank everybody and wish everybody a very happy Thanksgiving next week. I hope you have a wonderful and blessed time with your families, full of health and happiness together with friends. So thank you, and that's all for me.
Thank you, Roger. I'll simply say I echo all the comments of my peers on the board, and also thank all of our classified, all of our certificated, our administrators. You have worked diligently. You're all heroes in this time for your dedication. We thank you immensely. I'm thrilled that you get this break next week. Thank you to our families for the grace you've shown everybody, and the empathy and caring. We're all trying to work together at this time. So enjoy your families, and happy Thanksgiving as well to everyone. So thank you all. Let's now turn to our cabinet and move to first our Chief Business Official, Mr. Wilson.
Thank you, Dr. Goldman. Wendy, could I share my screen? Thank you. Just a few updates tonight. Everybody can see the screen? Yep. Okay. This is the summary of revenues to budget for the current fiscal year. I think I've shared this a few times. So this far left column is the revenue sources. Second column would be for the month, year to date. The next column, budget amount, and then the percent of the year to date. So the first one we'll go over is the local control funding formula for October, collected just over $826,000. Year to date, just over $4 million. We have a budget of 26.5. This will be updated at the first interim. So the next board meeting in December, the first interim budget will be revised to reflect updated budget numbers. The in lieu property taxes, this is the amount that the prorated amount of property taxes we give to Da Vinci schools for the prorated ADA. So for the month of October, we owed them just over $494,000. Year to date, paid them just over 1.6, and the budget for the year, we owe them about $4.1 million. Federal revenue for the month of
Excuse me, Dave.
Yes.
I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. You're on a roll.
That's
I know
okay.
that. But when you say for the year, you mean the school year, right?
Correct. School year. So July 1 through June 30th is the fiscal year that we follow.
Correct, because otherwise the numbers look squirrely considering we're at the end of November. So thank you for that clarification.
No, thank you for that clarification. Absolutely. It's a fiscal year, July 1 through June 30th. So, we're just basically 4 months into this fiscal year.
Though at the end of the school year, we would like you to be at 39% of budget in terms of spent, not received. So
noted. I'm not sure if I'll be able to make that happen, but
fair enough.
Fair enough. Federal revenues for the month of October, just under $70,000 year to date, $92,000. We're expecting a lot more in federal revenues to come in. Federal revenue, it trickles in, and the way they distribute the funds or they allocate the funds is based on quarterly cash reports that you submit. So as soon as we submit a quarterly cash report showing that we're owed additional federal revenues, we'll get a large influx of those federal revenues. So I'm not too concerned about that. Other state revenues for the month of October, and this is mainly lottery and other state mandated revenues. So for the month of October, $146,000, year to date, just over 643, and we're expecting just over 5 million for the year. Other local revenue, we kind of break this into two separate subcategories. One is parcel taxes, Measure CL. So nothing for the month of October. Year to date, only call it $15,000, and this concerned me. So I went back and looked at prior year because I thought, boy, we're already 4 months in. We should have received a lot more. I was thinking. So I went back and looked at where we were for last year. Really at the same spot. Last year we had 14,300. So really on par to where we are. We really collect these Measure CL parcel taxes. The bulk of them come in December and April when property taxes are due. So nothing to be worried about there. We're on par to where we were for last year as well. And then for the remaining other local revenue, $240,000 for the month of October. Year to date, $471,000 with a budget of 1.3. So, $787,000 collected for the month of October. Year to date, just over $3.6 million with a large $34.7 million to go. So, and this report will tie into the next report, our cash flow report, which is, and I just want you to remember this. Let me see. So $787,000. Remember that number for the month of October, which ties into right here. October revenues, 787. So these are the cash flows for the month of October. We ended the month of October with a cash positive balance of $2.4 million. The yellow cells represent projected out for the end of the year, through the end of the year. So you can see ending cash, this row F, row F. We're projecting to get a little bit low in November, the end of November, 1.9, but then you can see in December, we jump back up to 7.7. That's because we see a large influx of property taxes. And then if you go across, there's no negative cash projected for the year. So we're feeling comfortable with that. I'm going to look in November after we pay our November 1. Actually, we've paid it. I'll look next week to see, do we need to transfer any funds from Fund 17 or Fund 20? Because we typically pay out the expenses at the beginning of the month. So, certificated salaries get paid the first of the month, and classified salaries the 10th, right around the 10th of the month. And the revenues from the state and property taxes don't really trickle in till the end of the month. So I'll look tomorrow or early next week. Do we need to borrow internally until we get those large numbers at the end of November? So, but overall for the end of the year, don't expect any negative cash flows. And then lastly, just wanted to share where we are with our food service program for the year, July through October. You can see August, we had a slight deficit of just over, almost $5,000. September had a surplus of $55,000. October, a surplus of $26,000. And you can see this is October is the first full month of operations. And that's because October 10th is our classified payroll, and that covers the month of September. So September was really the first month we saw a full payroll cycle, and that is reflected on that October 10th payroll. That's why we see this. So this $26,000 surplus, we probably should anticipate somewhere around that range month to month over. So really no red flags for our food service program. Feeling good with this. And moving into next year, it has been mandated that school districts will have to offer a breakfast program. So as we get into the early months of spring, we'll start looking at what that looks like logistically for the district and figure out how we're going to roll that out for next year. And then next month, we had a couple of hiccups in our new software program in looking at the Del Air preschool program, but I do expect to bring the Del Air preschool program finances to the board in December and to kind of give you an overview of where we are with those finances through the year. Any questions on any of that? Very good. I will stop sharing.
Excellent to see, Dave. Appreciate this and the learning that comes from this. We become more familiar with it as well. It's very helpful. Anything
pleasure.
else to report, sir?
That's all tonight. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Looks like we'll have a report tonight from the Director of Psychological Services, Ms. Mazzarella.
Good evening, everyone. And speaking of the Del Air preschool program, my report is that last week on our Professional Development Day, we did hold one over at the preschool, specifically targeted to the teachers over there, including special ed and general education. And we revisited our PBIS that we had started to implement back in 5 years ago. In fact, we did a staff development in November 5 years ago on PBIS, and the team developed behavior matrix and started to roll it out in the classroom. So we revisited all of those things and practices that we did to include everyone, all the kids in positive behavior. And so, yeah, it went really well. It was nice to get together.
Terrific.
I have a
Thank you.
question. Thank you, Peggy. I wanted to ask you a question about, seems like it was maybe a month and a half ago, we had discussion about the playground area for the preschool. And I wonder if you could give an update, or Dave, somebody could give an update about, did we finish the sort of renovation of that area, or where are we with that?
Yes, so we added the grass turf, if you will, in the area where the sprinklers weren't working, and that's beautiful. It withstood the first day after I think we had it installed. We had that heavy rainstorm, and like I said, I thought it was going to be a slip and slide, and it wasn't. It was great. It absorbed really nicely into the ground, and it's nicely cut around the trees. We were able to save, obviously we're not going to cut the trees down, but they cut around the roots very nicely so that it's and it's adhered really nicely to the ground. So that's finished. And we also are going to be putting in the play structure. It's on schedule to start next week, I believe. We'll see. I'm going to double check with Karen tomorrow because things change every day these days. But that's the plan, is that they'll install it next week and we'll be able to use it hopefully the week after.
So the issues that were raised, the parents raised initially, have we solved those issues?
There's no more dirt, if that's the concern. That's correct. There is no more dirt on the campus for kids to get in and become super dirty, more than typical at school.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And along those lines, kudos to Peggy, you and Dave for lowering the sinks for the children, so they're safer and have access to easier washing.
Yes.
Let's now turn. Thank you, Peggy. Let's now turn to our Assistant Superintendent of Human Resources, Dr. Dougal.
Good evening, everyone. Just a quick COVID update. We do continue to have testing every Tuesday and Thursday at Dana and Anza's on Tuesday and Cabrillo on Thursdays. Next week, no testing due to Thanksgiving break, but we do encourage everyone to come back the following week and get tested. Neil and Dr. Goldman, you'd asked about the vaccine clinics. Just so everyone's aware, we did have an adult clinic on both September 21st and October 15th. And then we had our first pediatric clinic, which is for ages 5+. We've had 3 of them so far, November 5th, November 9th, and actually one tonight at Dana, and we've had really good turnouts. And then we have 2 more clinics at this time scheduled, November 30th. That will be the second dose for those kiddos that took the vaccine on 11/5 or 11/9. And then we have our second dose clinic for those students that took the vaccine today. That'll be on December 9th. Based on community interest, we may continue to have additional clinics throughout December, but at this time, those are the ones that are scheduled.
Thank you. Well, and to that point, you wouldn't necessarily think of the vaccine clinics as a community event, but as Mr. Martinez shared, I got to see these too. I mean, I've never seen such happy people in my life, right? It was just very, very happy community members and a great event. So thank you again for coordinating that. Let's move to our Assistant Sup of Ed Services.
Thank you, Dr. Goldman. I want to give you an update on our November 12th Professional Development Day as well. You know, this is, I just want to start by saying how important these days are. They give teachers a moment away from the busyness of running a school, of being in front of a class, and really allow them to learn and to plan for their students. So we base this whole day on our Wiseburn Assurance that's framed around the whole child to address the individual needs of their academic needs, their social emotional needs. And in that planning, we made sure that we didn't overfill the day. We want to make sure our teachers have time to absorb and also to think about how to use that information immediately in class. So that was the whole emphasis as we went forward. For our TK through 5th grade teachers, this is part 2 of the Writers Workshop initiative that we have going in the district. You might remember they started with the narrative essay. This is where our teachers coach students through, and this is TK through 5, identifying a small moment and then writing a narrative essay around that moment. So a little bit different than what we've done before with mini lessons and conferring and really an active participation by students in the writing process. So that was super, I want to say, successful. We had writing celebrations in all of our classrooms. And in fact, we're looking at a writing celebration for our staff as well. So that's behind us now. We're moving on to the next essay. So on November 12th, we were introduced to the informative essay. And the informative essay is different, and it's going to be different for our little ones, our TK, and again, different for the upper grades on how they approach this. So teachers were given a full day in service. We had the TK2 teachers separate from the 3 through 5. Their needs are a little bit different with 2 presenters from Momentum in teaching. We moved on from there. We also had our independent study teachers meeting separately to learn more about their online program, the curriculum that we have going for our independent study program. Our music department met separately. We've introduced, violins to all of our 5th graders this year. So we want them to go back and revamp an articulation program across our district. So TK through 8, Toby Harwell, of course, as part of that team, was able to give them insight into the music program at Da Vinci so that we see some flow from TK all the way up. That was their day. We also had the Success Learning Center. They spent their day looking at support strategies for students, restorative justice, social circles. So Tammy, the principal, led that PD. And then over at Dana, the emphasis really was again on students and the personalization of learning. So the teachers worked together on to analyze student work with their teaching partners and their teams. And this is where they had a hands-on workshop on our Performance Matters program, which is our data program, fully accessible through PowerSchool to all of our teachers, where they can grab all the data they need about their students right there online whenever they want it. So we have our local assessments in there, grades, and when CASP comes back, our mandated state testing, that will be in there too. But they can look historically at students and they can look at where they are today. Since we just finished our 2nd round of STAR testing in reading and math, they had really live data right there, had just finished about their students. So then they went into teams and used what's called a fishbowl activity, different things that Kiana and Kevin led over there, really productive day for their teachers. So our next day for learning and planning is going to be March 4th. We'll be moving on then to the opinion essay in our TK through 5th grade. I'm looking forward to telling you more about that. Dana, we're still looking at teacher needs. And I inadvertently left off the fact that we did survey the teachers before we put together the Educator Effectiveness Grant to look at what it is that they feel is important as we go forward with our professional development. Writing stood out as number 1 for our elementary, and reading, mathematics, and science right after that. So we felt really good about that survey. We're going to repeat that survey as we keep going forward, so we're always in tune to what the teachers need. And that is my report for tonight.
Thank you, Dr. Harbeck. Just to piggyback on something Mr. Mora has long been a champion of, is making sure we don't leave students behind and keeping them, making sure, especially in COVID, we're keeping people. When I hear the personalization of learning, which gets me very excited, does that translate into understanding each individual student to a greater extent than we may have in the past, to see what their needs are so we can address this concern Mr. Mora keeps bringing up appropriately?
I think I can stand behind that in the processes with Writers Workshop, which really are not just about writing. It's about understanding where every child is. The dynamics of that kind of teaching are inspiring. Having been an English teacher, seeing that happen for students and the individualization going on with our teachers, I would say at Dana, when you have these larger groups of students that we're working with, when you have teams of teachers working together, all 5 teachers talking about the same students, using data behind that discussion, it's just outstanding. It really does allow you to think about, and there's something called a roll call, I'll just go into briefly, where every student's name is mentioned and there's remarks made on their growth, their challenges, and where we need to go next with these children. So this happens, I think, just organically at Dana. There's a process going on there. We're going to see more of that happening in our schools.
Very exciting. And in my professional and strategic work, there's trends we're all familiar with, and individualization and personalization is happening everywhere. We expect that now. To see that that's happening, we're moving towards that in our schools, is both inspiring and arguably necessary. So thank you for this leading step and really important work.
Thank you.
We will turn to our superintendent, Dr. Silvers.
Thanks, Dr. Goldman. I don't have much else. I think I shared enough, but I do want to just a real quick couple updates. Mr. Banuelos, you asked about the choice blocks. I do believe we have that information. We have been tracking that. I don't have it off the top. I wasn't prepared to present that, but certainly can bring that back at the next meeting and provide that information for you.
Yes, thank you.
Also want to comment on Measure CL, Measure A. We did have our oversight meeting for our Measure CL and our Measure A just last week, I believe. Time's flying, but I just want to thank the community for when you start looking at the amount of money that's coming into the school district to help support things like safety and technology. It's just really incredible, and what we're able to do with that. So just real hats off to the community for their willingness to allow for this for our students. Then I wanted to just share a little bit about our IT department. We have begun conversations, and thanks to Eileen's leadership on this, to begin conversing with Jesse Corral from Da Vinci Schools to move our network infrastructure over to the 201 North Douglas site. It's just much better equipped. Is that the right language? Yes, it's more equipped or better equipped to be able to manage the infrastructure that we need for technology. He did also perform updates on our firewall, which makes me sleep better at night for now as we start, making this move over. At least we know I feel a little bit more comfortable about our current state, there. And oftentimes our IT folks are behind the scenes. They're not forward facing too much. But they're running around doing a whole bunch of work. And just I know this board knows, but for the public to know, we were down, pretty much our entire team minus a couple. And hats off to Juan Solis for just his work, really by himself, and with the help of Jason Neely, who's a consultant for us, just to keep us moving. And we still had thousands of Chromebooks to service, or to send out. And we still had we just got a shipment of teacher laptops. And staff laptops. This work still has to get done for us to operate. And so, I just want to give a thank you, kind of in the spirit of thanks, to that team, who oftentimes goes unnoticed or under noticed, maybe, and I think sometimes they choose to do that, but that's okay. We just want to thank them anyway. I also want to share with this board too that we did make a decision to purchase a truck for our maintenance operations team. It's about a $53,000 purchase. The second truck that we needed, and that fills our truck need. And the reason we needed this particular truck, it's an extended cab. We need room for 3 to 4 maintenance and grounds crew, and to have them sitting on a bench seat, a one-seater, in a regular cab just wasn't working. And so we're able to actually facilitate 3 or 4 of our grounds crew to do their work and be able to sit in a spaced out. So hopefully that truck will be arriving here in the next couple of days. But happy to start seeing that fleet of vehicles, represent Wiseburn. We like to have nice things and things that are working, and this really adds to our fleet. Probably looking at a van as well, but that'll be down the road a little bit. So all good things. And then I just want to thank the people on the screen. I really want to thank the cabinet. That's a lot of moving parts, and everybody's playing such an integral role in this, and of course this board, for your leadership and guidance throughout this process. And at home, and those people are teachers and support staff across the board for everything. Happy Thanksgiving, happy Thanksgiving. Rest well and enjoy families and whatever you do to enjoy That's all for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. And echoing all the thanks to everybody here tonight. Let's move on with our agenda. Action items, facilities 7.1, approved firm for architectural and engineering design services for the CTE Studio, playing off of our presentation earlier today. A motion, please.
Motion.
Thank you, Nelson.
Second.
I have a comment.
Please. Go ahead, Joanne.
I understand that when I raised the question about accessibility to the site, that it was kind of waved off because that's not necessarily part of the architectural process. That's more involved with when the actual bids come in from the construction, for the construction itself. But what I guess my point is that we've had a lot of experience as a board with architectural firms and architectural designs. And sometimes there are mistakes made in the architectural design stage where the actual facility that's designed is not constructible. Or if it is constructed, you run into problems later because some things were missed. Witness the air conditioning or the air control systems over at Da Vinci. So I would really ask that as this architectural work is being done, and I understand the vote of confidence in this firm, that the constructability of anything that's designed is really reviewed for not just its beauty, which is the slide that we saw tonight, but that it's reviewed for its ability to be constructed in an efficient manner and in a way that will have durability and longevity for the site and for the community. So I just wanted to make that comment. I felt a little underwhelmed by the response that I got to my question earlier this evening from the architectural firm, and working with construction over the years myself, and certainly our board has a lot of expertise in that. I would really request that the concept of constructability be a really big item in any designs that we receive.
Thank you. Other comments or thoughts here? I do have one question about if we haven't clarified the location. I'm not understanding how we can put a price to the design. I'm a little confused on that.
Just as a comment, I believe within their services, they're going to have to look at a potential couple of locations for it, because one of the requirements from the Department of the State Architect is the site location and siting for access. So they're going to have to ensure that, I mean, for example, DSA will not approve this project unless it is fully accessible. So that's one. And then they mentioned the other thing about utilities. They have to really study the as-built, right? Because if there's a lot of utilities in that way, those $300,000, that might be cost prohibitive to the project. So I think they're leaving themselves a little wiggle room here, and that might be part of the agenda item. It says the cost is between $98,500 and $127,500, depending on the type. So not everything is done. You know, they would be just starting out now. They're going to have to go through an extensive process of programming, site location, then get into a schematic and further develop the design before it moves forward. So I anticipate quite a few more presentations from not only SVA, but also with Steve and other folks that are going to be involved. So I don't think that decision has been formally made. I think there's a preference that it goes in that location, because when they submitted for the grant, they had to at least put a location of what it would look like or where it could go. Doesn't necessarily mean that it's a final as of yet. That's my understanding of the process.
And at this time, we're approving the design. We're not approving any construction. And this is all not any fees that we're incurring at Wiseburn. So just want to clarify that.
Yeah, I
We're
think
not
that,
approving the design. I thought we were approving the firm.
Yes, I mean, yeah, the firm to pursue.
Okay, that's different. Okay, thank you.
the work of designing and the work of the design in our
The effort to create the design.
Yes.
There is no design.
Thank you
There's
for
a concept,
clarifying.
but there's
Yeah.
no design. Okay, good.
Right.
Thank you.
Right.
Well, with that confusion unconfused, thank you. Wendy, we do have a motion and a second, so let's take a vote.
And Wendy, we do have to roll call.
Correct.
Vote.
Correct. Mr. Benuelos,
Aye.
Dr. Goldman,
Aye.
Ms. Canetta,
Aye.
Mr. Martinez,
Aye.
Mr. Mora.
Aye.
Thank you.
All right, let us now return to item 6.1, resolution 21/22.06. Basically authorizing the remote teleconference meetings for the period of November 1st through November 30th, 2021. This is something we need to do every month to continue to have our meetings as such as we are tonight.
You have a motion?
Thank you.
I'll second.
Thank you both. Vote please, Wendy.
Mr. Benuelos,
Aye.
Dr. Goldman,
Aye.
Ms. Canetta,
Aye.
Mr. Martinez,
Aye.
Mr. Mora.
Aye. You said you have to do this monthly. You can't do a couple months at a time?
No,
Okay.
unfortunately. So we'll see this every month as long as we continue this practice. We'll move now to action items fiscal 8. If someone is so inclined, 8.1, 8.2, and 8.3 may be moved.
You have a motion 8.1 to 8.3.
And I would like to second that.
Thank you both. Any comments or questions on these items?
No comments.
I have a comment. I'd just like to thank AYSO that one of the items that it's on here is for the $45,000 annual turf replacement contribution. So we have a great partnership with AYSO, and it's nice to see that coming forward for $45,000 so that we have those monies in place for maintenance and future replacement. So thank you for the partnership with AYSO.
Thank you. And then Dave, I had an observation. I could be misremembering that on the expenses payables that we had an unusually atypically low bill for Chartwells. And am I misremembering that?
58,000.
Yeah,
so Chartwells, Dr. Goldman, Chartwells and the board, they invoice us on the meals served. And what month was that for? October. So October, it was a full month. I believe, if my memory serves me right, I think the September, because September was also a full month. I don't remember any holidays other than the Labor Day holiday. I think that was around $45,000 to $50,000. I can double check, but this seems in line with prior month costs.
I'm just misremembering. So I'll track that as well. I'm fine with it. Thank you.
Okay.
We have a motion and a second. Wendy, please.
Mr. Benuelos,
Aye.
Dr. Goldman,
Aye.
Ms. Canetta,
Aye.
Mr. Martinez,
Aye.
Mr. Mora.
Aye. So everything requires roll call now, is that correct?
Why is that?
This was just because we're on Zoom. This was actually a practice that was advised by our attorney.
Oh, okay.
Clarity.
Yeah.
Action items consent 9.1 to 9.8. Motion if someone is so inclined.
You have a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Mora.
I like the second 9.1 through 9.8.
Thank you, Ms. Martinez. Comments or questions, please? Hearing
I did
none.
have a question. Bilingual stipends. When are those used?
So I'll take this one. They are used when we have translation services needed, say when parents come into the office or we need IEPs translated. And so we actually have not done a test in a few years. And so we actually just retested or tested employees last week that were eligible.
Okay, thank you.
And this is distinct from any communications we're having translated, correct?
Correct. These are employees whose, one of their job functions would be to translate regularly.
Thank you. I see no other questions. Ms. Subaki.
Mr. Benuelos,
Aye.
Dr. Goldman,
Aye.
Ms. Canetta,
Aye.
Mr. Martinez,
Aye.
Mr. Mora.
Aye.
Action items 10, personnel, 10.1 through 10.7. Motion, please.
You have a motion for 10.1 to 10.7.
Thank you, Ms. Margolis.
I'll second.
Thank you, Joanne. Do want to call out, we have, Dr. Silvers, you can help me out here. It's one of the people who is leaving us, and we want to make a recognition of our departing nurse.
Yeah, I think she was actually departed and returned, and now is departing. So I'll turn that over. I think Peggy is going to share.
Yes, so we are very grateful for Ellen Russ to come back to us this school year part-time. We have an agency nurse who is wonderful, and she's getting up and running on school procedures. And so Ellen came in and helped get her oriented, and also they did the entire district. So they're still completing the health and vision screenings for the whole district. And so we will be done. She will be finished with them by the time we go out for winter break. So we really, really appreciate her coming back out of retirement to help us out. And we're sorry she's leaving again.
So thank you very much, Ellen. We also have someone mentioned this evening who was a consultant that we have acknowledged earlier in this agenda and is now moving to an employee status. And Dr. Silvers, if you want to address that, if you would.
Yeah, I think actually, well, first, yes, very excited that we're able to offer this position to Jason. I think it's 10.7 here on the agenda, but I will defer to Eileen to share a little bit about this.
Right. I just want to thank you all so much for giving us the opportunity to bring on Jason Neely. He is a true talent. We've worked with him for quite a while now during the pandemic when we needed great help with our website. And when we found that there was an opening, you know, Jason came in as a consultant to fill in and help us through some really difficult times. He's been helping us not only address help tickets from our teachers, but also to organize IT with Juan, of course. They're doing just a magnificent job. So we're very pleased to see that he has an interest in confirming his employment with us and extending it. And there he is. So I couldn't be happier, of course, to be working with somebody already in our fold here in Wiseburn and already familiar with our work. So welcome, Jason.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome.
We didn't vote. There's no vote yet, so it's not official yet.
Welcome to the Zoom, Jason.
Well, yeah, I'll tell you what, Jason, hang with us just a sec. I think let's take this to, let's take 10-1 to 10-7 to a vote so we can have it official.
Mr. Benuelos,
Aye.
Dr. Goldman,
Aye.
Ms. Canetta,
Aye.
Mr. Martinez,
Aye.
Mr. Mora.
Aye.
Now it's official, Jason.
Now it's
Welcome
official.
aboard.
All right, congratulations. Bravo.
Now, you have to give a speech, I think, Jason.
Okay. And just I'm happy to officially be part of the Wiseburn team now. Everyone I've dealt with so far has been very supportive, so I truly do appreciate that. And I'd just like to thank everyone, especially Dr. Harbeck, for putting your trust in me and giving me this opportunity.
Well, again,
Well said. Thank you very much. Thanks for your help.
Congratulations and welcome.
yes, indeed. And you know, he is a man unseen, but he and Juan, as you mentioned, behind the scenes making all this happen. So thank you both, and good to have you here officially. Upcoming dates and events. Dr. Silvers, if you would.
So I think real fresh on everybody's mind is we have a week of holiday, and it's I just want to be clear, it's all of our facilities will be closed, the district office, the maintenance area. This is actually the 1 week of the year that the entire district is closed. And definitely this is the time for people to rejuvenate, rest, relax, all those good things, all the R's. So that's our Thanksgiving holiday, and then we will have our next regularly scheduled board meeting with an error here. So the actual date, we have asked and are asking the board if we could do December 14th instead, because our first interim, so we may have to reflect that in the minutes if the board is agreeable to December 14th. If we need to check calendars on that, but the first interim report needs to be approved on or before December 15th. So just didn't fall within the line of our normal cadence of meetings by 1 day. But if we can move it, and Da Vinci has a board meeting the 15th, So it just made sense to not conflict with that meeting as well. So this would show, hopefully in the minutes, will show a change to the board meeting date.
And reflecting to mandates that really makes it irresponsible not to move this meeting to those dates. So
Correct.
that's what we do.
Absolutely.
All right. Well,
That's it for me.
everyone, enjoy your holiday. We've now reached the end of our agenda. Is there any more business that any member wishes to raise at this time?
Just happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
Happy Thanksgiving to all.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
At 8:18, I declare this meeting adjourned.
All right. Take
Thank you.
care. Take care.
Good
all.
night.
Good night.
Good night,
Bye,
everyone.
everybody.